All right, let's go ahead and get started. Howdy, howdy, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Sharkinbear, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be doing a video on basically something that I don't really like to touch on too much because I don't want it to influence too many people, basically on what they play and what they shouldn't play. But I still feel like this is a fairly important subject to talk, especially those people who are looking for characters that are efficient to farm materials or how they overall play in the game. So that being said, what we're going to be looking at is essentially my personal tier list for all the characters currently available in Soulstone Survivor. Now, I may not touch on the last 5 characters in this video just yet, and most of the reason for that one is because while they are fun to play in their own right, these aren't the characters you're going to have access to from the get-go at all, or you're going to be working towards. The first, 12, 16, 17 characters that you're going to have access to, you're going to actually be able to get access to all of them fairly quickly within the first couple hours of the game. I say first couple, but 10 or so hours of the game, you're going to be working towards unlocking all these characters. And I honestly feel like those are pretty much going to be your main focal point for the game. So what we're going to do here is I'm basically going to ask 4 questions of each character. We're basically going to go down to the pros and cons of each character. We're going to ask how their weapons are, what the artifact powers are, and how efficient they are. And finally, what their ascensions are, and how strong I feel like their ascensions are into the game. So if you like this sort of content, you want to see more guides like this or more videos like this, make sure you like, subscribe, and comment down below. And I'm actually going to swap over to my actual existing save, because this will allow me going to look at the artifact powers for each weapon a little bit more. As you can see, this is my fresh save campaign that I'm doing to play along with the new players, essentially, and give them tips on how I feel the feedback, given that the game just released a 1.0 and some things changed. But I'm just kind of toggling through there, so you can see that I've actually been putting a little bit effort in and trying to play this character, this save with you guys. So give me a moment to jump over to my actual fresh save, or my old save, and we'll walk through each of these. Alright, so we're back on my account that I've had for a while now, the one I put the most time into, and we're going to start out with the first class that you have access to in the game, and that is the Barbarian. And by default, I'm going to go ahead and start out by giving you my tier rating for it, and then I'm going to work my way, basically logically, why I sat him where I sat him, as well as all the other characters. So on a grade rating, I'm actually going to give the Barbarian a B. And that's probably about as low as I'm going to go on some ratings. We'll just see about that, how I work my way through it. But honestly, as a starting character, the Barbarian is a decent character. It's not a bad character by any rate. As you get to progress further into the game, unless you have a very specific niche build and use specific runes to basically progress through Titan Hunt, which there are a couple of things you can abuse to make it through those sorts of things. The toolkit that the Barbarian has by default is just not that impressive compared to the other things. All of his weapons are fairly cool looking. I really like the second weapon, which is the Skullbreaker. I love the abilities that come with it, and I really wanted to enjoy the toolkits overall. But I just don't find that a lot of the physical melee characters in this game can really keep up with the power of some of the other characters in the game. Again, this is all personal opinion. If you don't agree with this, I completely understand. You have the right to disagree with me as much as you want, but just over my existing time with this game and trying to play with them, I honestly have had such a hard time struggling to find a set ability skill bar that basically works to progress through the more difficult content at the same speed other characters have. I feel like I have to leech into other characters' abilities and use them through runes in order to get what I would like to achieve with other characters at just as fast a rate. All the weapons here are fairly just decent. As far as the artifact power, all of his artifact powers are called Warcry, and they shout, and they all do like a conal damage in front of them, and actually splits the damage based on the enemies that were hit, but they do things like increase your multicast, increasing the area based on your hit. What does this one do? This one increases your crit damage based on how many enemies were hit, and the damage modifier. As far as an artifact power, it is a decent artifact power. It's not terrible. You're not really going to notice it, I don't think, because of the damage being split amongst all targets that were hit. I don't, or it says temporarily increasing your damage modifier based on how many enemies were hit. So I believe that just means there's a cap on how many you get hit. It's just okay. It's not fantastic. As far as the skills list go, I feel like there's a lot to be desired here. Armor Shatter's a really good one. I really like Shatter on there. I like any ability that gives Shatter. I'm not really big on the finesse or multicast play of the Barbarian himself. The second one, there are a whole bunch of colossal builds that actually work very, very effectively, and I really enjoy that. As far as his third weapon that uses Electrified, I'm not really sold on Electrified being a very strong stat to sit behind, mostly because I find Electrified to be one of the elemental debuffs in the game that doesn't really do much of anything. It's just basically whenever you have enough stacks, you basically release a whole bunch of jolts that go around and they do heavy damage and apply dazed, which is fine, but like in all honesty, it's kind of underwhelming how well this does not work. The last weapon could be decent, but these weapons don't really have a lot of oomph to them, and even if you're empowering these abilities a lot, they just don't feel like they're contributing enough to your prowess gain or doing a whole bunch of anything for you. So that's my thoughts on that one. As far as their Ascension ability, the Ascension ability for the Barbarian, let's see if we can find him over here, is actually the Rage Unleashed. The Barbarian may now earn rage by killing enemies, being able to overcome and rage, receiving major improvements while the rage lasts. Now this is a decent Ascension, and probably one of my favorite Ascensions by default, just because it's one that you don't have to worry about whatsoever. It just starts up on its own, it ends on its own. You're gaining energy or rage as you just play through the game. Nothing you have to activate. It's just a fire and forget sort of thing. You don't even have to fire it. You can just forget it because it just happens naturally, and it gives you a pretty decent rage buff. But it doesn't add too much more to your damage. So that's why I feel like the Barbarian is kind of in a B sort of spot right there. He's not terrible. He's not the best at anything. He's just an okay starting character. So that's my thoughts on that. Let's go ahead and move on to the next one. Starting with the next one, we have the Pyromancer. I'm actually going to give the Pyromancer an A rating. This is actually probably one of the strongest early game characters that you're going to be able to unlock. And the main reason for that is because this character has probably one of the best starter kits in the game. Most of his weapons, or her weapons, are fantastic. The artifact powers are pretty good as well, and the Ascension ability is also pretty good to have as well. By default, the Pyromancer starts out with the Pyromancer's Fire Starter right here, and it comes with 2 of the fire skills. You won't have any of the character abilities just yet, but you will start out with a number of the fire abilities already active, and just having burn and burn as a dot on enemies is going to help you burn through the early game content really quickly, pun intended. It's just an overall amazing toolkit. As far as the other 3 weapons, the second weapon is just okay. I would even say the third weapon is just okay as well, but Chaos Eruption is a very strong skill. If you were to pair a whole bunch of burn skills with this one, Chaos Eruption is an amazing skill because it does damage based on the amount of burn you have, so that's pretty great. If you manage to unlock the Chaoswalker fairly soon into your gameplay, you'll actually get access to the controlled Chaos Room. And basically what that does is, you can see right here on Chaos Eruption, it does between 1 and 1,000 points of damage, where that Chaos Eruption, basically, it rolls the damage twice. Basically right here, as you can see right here, for all your abilities to deal a random amount of damage, damage will be rolled twice and the highest roll will be chosen. So this damage right here, say it rolls 800 damage and 400 damage. It'll actually roll the damage, and it'll be like, oh, well, you did 800 damage in one roll, 400 in another. We're just going to do the flat 800 first. We're going to take the highest number, essentially. So you're going to get a lot of DPS out of this weapon, or this ability, if you use this one. This final weapon, I haven't used a lot, but I will tell you, I am a big fan from the little bit that I have used it, because Doom is probably one of the strongest elemental debuffs in the game. Because if you're not super familiar with Doom, basically, this fills up a bar as it's doing its ticking damage, which it does no damage by default. It only does damage in one instance after the ticker is down. And essentially, if you keep hitting enemies, the debuff keeps refreshing on a target, and you'll see it fill up as a purple bar in their health bar. And if the whole bar turns purple before it explodes, it'll just straight up execute the enemy. It's a very, very powerful execution on enemies. This is a crazy good debuff to have on them. As far as the Ascension power is called Phoenix Rebirth, and it says releases phoenixes that fly around you, causing damage and applying burn. Obviously, it's going to apply different status effects based on the weapon you have. So we have Dazed for the second weapon. For the third weapon, it's Disarray. And for the fourth weapon, it is Doom. And this is a really good artifact power to have on your character. As far as the ascension for the Pyromancer is actually called Wrathful Focus, and essentially as you're going around and you're dealing damage to enemies, you're basically going to see that after you fill up your like a power bar, there's going to be a fiery portal that opens up, and you just stand in there, and then instantly you have now like this thing called Draconic Flame that basically disperses even more damage on top of the abilities you can do, stacking even more burn damage on targets. This is a extremely powerful and very active ability, like in the sense that it comes up quite often. Even with just like a 1-pointer in here, you're still going to be having access to the Wrathful Focus ability quite a bit. So that is all that I have for the Pyromancer, and let's move on. And with that being said, we are now on to the Hound Master, which I'm also going to give a rating of A. This character is an all-around amazing character to use, and as soon as you get access to the Ascension ability for the Hound Master, this guy is going to be an unstoppable force. It really is automatically with the Rusted Blaster. A lot of the user-friendly weapons for beginning players are going to be the ranged characters, and in that instance, the Hound Master is basically no different from any other ranged character in the sense that he is absolutely strong. He starts off with Bombardment and Mortar Shot for his ability skills, which I'm going to be completely honest, I'm not a big fan of bomb-like abilities, because instead of like being like a projectile that shoots straight out, they kind of have an arc and then kind of splash on the ground in front of you. I'm not a big fan of that. But that being said, as you get stuff like cast frequency and area of effect, this really does start to devastate the entire screen. You can cover the entire screen in bombs. It is just absolutely 100% an amazing weapon. And then looking down the tier, like the other weapons, every single other weapon that he has access to is very strong. As soon as you unlock the second weapon right here, the Rifleman's Vengeance, you also have access to like straight out amazing skills. They give you ammunition, which basically increases the amount of multicast you have whenever you reach enough stacks of ammunition. And of course, as always, when you get access to the third weapon, you're going to have access to poison attacks by default with this gun. And let me just tell you, this gun is amazing. If you were waiting for like one gun that's going to clear all for the Hound Master, it is absolutely 100% going to be the Toxic Cannon. This gun is phenomenal because it is an elemental gun, and just by default, if you were to go down this list and just pick all the poison abilities, like I would literally pick Pesticide Burst, Threshing Blast, Pestilence, Acid Rain, and I usually end up taking Poison Cloud for the weakness. You will not have anything that you cannot take down with the Hound Master. Poison is probably one of the strongest early elemental debuffs in the game. Plus, if you know your synergies, like what element leads into any, you know that Poison will definitely allow you to eventually cast Doom whenever you hit an enemy with Poison. And so Doom, being one of my default favorite elemental status effects in the game, make this one of the best weapons in the game, period, to have just by default. The third weapon is pretty good, nothing to write home about. Aptitude is a crit damage booster, fairly strong, but still good. As far as artifact power, our artifact power is called Feral Awakening here right now. And as you can see, each one of the guns will actually give your dogs, it's not going to show me all of them because I only have 2 of them at +5 or higher, but they will basically give your dogs different modifiers. So if we look at these two, you'll see that the modifiers for our dogs are slightly different, but the dogs are very, very useful, and they're even more enhanced whenever we get to our Ascension power. As far as our Ascension power for the Hound Master, the Hound Master has Hound's Feast. The Hound Master may now collect food from defeated enemies, which can be used to feed the hounds, healing them and making them well fed, which grants major improvements based on how well fed they are. This is probably one of the top tier Ascensions in the game. Why? Because as soon as you start the game and you start collecting meat off of enemies, this Ascension power will almost have an 100% uptime. I would say this is basically a 95% uptime Ascension power, because the more meat you collect, the more of your dogs are being empowered, more or less. And then realistically, even with a 1-point click into this one, you might not have less than 2 or 3 dogs who are empowered, and you can have up to, I think it's like 6 or 8 of these dogs up at any given time, but they are incredibly strong, and you're going to have no problem taking on whatever objective you have. The cool thing is, as you go down the skill tree, you're actually going to see that you have the ability to increase the amount of companions that you have with you at any given time, which is really good. And so that is the Hound Master. Let's go ahead and move on to our next character. So I said I wasn't going to do a C rating for any of the characters, but sadly that was a lie. I am going to give my one of my 2 C ratings to the Spellblade. Now hear me out. This character can actually be fun. There's some stuff here, and the character is actually still strong in his own right. As a matter of fact, if you abuse a couple of runes, this is actually probably one of the strongest characters in the game. But if we're looking at an overall toolkit and ease of use for new players starting out who are just getting into Soulstone Survivor and they're looking at a character to jump behind for ease of use, the Spellblade just isn't it. Every single weapon is just okay and doesn't offer a lot in the ways of anything other than the final weapon. The final weapon is incredibly strong, and it's probably one of the only saving graces as far as weapons go for me personally. Once upon a time, I would say a lot of the arcane abilities used to be some of the strongest weapons in the game, or strongest abilities in the game. And maybe it's just me, but in my head, these skills just don't hit as hard as they once used to. I don't know what changes they've made. I haven't gone back to look at the changelog and how they fit into the grand scheme of things, like what's changed, what hasn't. But overall, I really don't feel like the Spellblade comes into much of his own until you get to this 4th weapon and then specialize around using a lot of the fire-based skills for that. And for that reason, I'm not a big fan. Well, that being said, what about the artifact power? The artifact power is called Ethereal Shadow, and it says it creates an ethereal clone for a few seconds to cast both of your weapon skills at nearby enemies, and the trait is Cunning, so they tackle priority targets. This is the same for every single one of your weapons. It does not change. So basically a clone will show up and they'll use both of these skills right here that you have active for whatever weapon you have equipped. Honestly, this artifact power is kind of underwhelming because it takes into effect what weapon abilities you currently have active. And like I said, other than the 4th weapon, these other ones are just kind of okay. They're not fantastic. They're not something super to write home about. But yeah, so that is the weapons for them. As far as the Ascension power, that is another really big sticking point for me. The Ascension power for the Spellblade has got to be, in my opinion, one of the worst Ascension powers in the game. But on the other side of things, it is also probably one of the strongest Ascension powers in the game. That doesn't make a lot of sense, but let me basically walk you through my logic. So it's called Riftwalker. The Spellblade may now interact with astral rifts that are opened by killing enemies to gain astral power, which may be consumed to enter cosmic form, allowing him to emanate a series of powerful effects depending on how much astral power has consumed in the process. So this is a very, very powerful Ascension. The only problem with this is that basically one of the things that I hate the most as far as Ascensions goes, there's certain characters in this game that actually require you to stand in a spot and absorb a certain amount of energy or pick a certain thing up or channel something in order for you to basically use your Ascension. This is no different with the Spellblade. This is probably the biggest gripe that I have with the Spellblade. So essentially, there are going to be these purple portals that show up all over the ground, or pools, sorry, and you stand in them and you absorb some of that astral power there, and the pool will disappear, and that's how you build the astral power up. And after you've built up at least 1 charge, which you can have up to 4 charges, you can activate your astral power by walking through what looks like a rift that shows up on the map. But this astral power diminishes very, very quickly, and it takes quite a while to soak up an astral pool that's on the ground. Sometimes you get lucky and several astral pools will overlap and you'll actually be able to absorb multiple astral pools at one time, therefore increasing your astral power growth, giving you access to more astral powers, which is fine, but we still have this problem where you're having to stand in this very small circle while you're trying to, basically avoid these very large red circles from doing a lot of damage to you. You can negate some of this by in-game passes when you're in your game, where you basically increase the amount of astral power that you absorb from those pools, therefore reducing the amount of time you have to stand in those circles. And then eventually, as you get in, it is very possible to get close to 100% uptime on these astral powers for your Riftwalker if you maintain standing around these portals. The only problem is the point at which that starts to become a thing is pretty fairly late in a lot of people's runs. And I just don't feel like it's worth it. I mean, the power's strong. It is worth it. It's just the amount of effort it takes to get to that point compared to other characters. It just doesn't make sense to me. I don't like how small the circles are. I don't like how long it takes to absorb them. I don't like how short the power actually lasts. And I just wish there was an easier, more efficient way to grab this power up. Because if there was, then this ability, this ascension power, would make its way to the top of my list like instantly. So that is a little bit about the Spellblade. Let's move on to the next character. And now we are on to the Arcane Weaver. For starting, I'm going to go ahead and say that I give the Arcane Weaver a solid B, maybe like a B+. Once upon a time, I would say the Arcane Weaver used to be probably one of the stronger characters in the game, because just like the Spellblade, using Arcane as a main contributor for the first couple of abilities you have, I feel like Arcane doesn't hit nearly as hard as it used to. As far as weapons go, I would say that the first weapon is absolutely probably one of the worst weapons in her toolkit, honestly. As far as the second and third weapon, these weapons are actually fairly good. The second weapon actually gives you fiery missiles, which actually gives you burn. So if you decide to go like a burn route, which is very possible to do, you're going to find a lot of power within that. The third weapon, which actually surprised the crap out of me, is called the Benedicto Staff of Dawn, is actually insanely good. I tend to stay away from purity-based weapons because, again, it's not like an elemental debuff, and it does heal you, but it doesn't do a lot of damage when it hits enemies, because purity will actually do like a wave of light to damage enemies. If it hits 4 or more, it also heals you. But what really makes this weapon shine is that both weapon abilities on the Benedicto give exposed, which causes you to increase the amount of damage that enemies take. These are two very highly effective skills, and they stack extremely fast, so I cannot give this one enough praise just for that. Oh, I actually read Celestial Retribution wrong. It does damage based on the number of stacks of exposed, so but still very strong, because anything that's going to deal damage based on stacks, it's generally strong. There are a couple of abilities that don't actually shine, even though they do damage based on stacks, but the Benedicto surely does. I haven't used the fourth weapon too much. I'm sure with certain setups you might actually get this to work just okay, but like Icy Veins in and of itself is just an okay debuff on enemies. It really shines when you start to pair it with other abilities from other toolkits like Glacial Affinity, which boosts the amount of damage you do, like your damage modifier. But other than that, nothing to write home about. As far as your artifact power, it says you have Mana Beam. Summons a crystal close to your position and attempts to create an arcane connection for a few seconds if within range, and causing slow. The Benedicto does dazed. The Ignis does burn, and the first one does brittle. It basically makes little drone turrets that shoot at enemies. The only problem is that I have with these is that I wish they had cunning, which would make them like target your priority targets, such as Void Lords and Elites. That would probably be if they had made the change to make it cunning on this weapon, it would probably be a lot better across the board for all these weapons. But since they just target random targets, they're just okay. As far as the Ascension ability for the Arcane Weaver, we actually have Mana Infusion. The Arcane Weaver may now find mana crystals, which can be harvested for mana. Once completely overflowing the mana, the Arcane Weaver will become infused, gaining major improvements while her mana lasts. This Ascension power is just okay. It is very ease of use sort of thing. You'll see crystals pop off of dead enemies. You'll go and pick that up. You'll have a little globe that you fill up, and as it powers up, you'll be infused powers and basically get a damage buff, as well as other improvements while you're using it. So in that sense, it's very easy to keep up, but like it will drop off of you. I don't know if there's a way to get this 100% uptime. I don't particularly play the Arcane Weaver a lot, so I'm not super informative if you can get 100% uptime on that one, but you can keep your bar filled up. It just drains faster and faster over time, regardless of how many orbs or mana gems you pick up for this. So this is just an okay character. I feel like Once Upon a Time used to be a lot stronger than it is, but not so much anymore. Next up, we have this Sentinel. And by default, I'm going to give the Sentinel an A rating. This is absolutely one of the most user-friendly characters starting out the game of Soulstone Survivor and last all the way through the end game. There's not a single thing about this character that I feel like could be improved in any shape, form, or fashion. This is just an overall strong character. Starting out with the weapon, the very first one, you only have access to 2 abilities right here, Shoot and Rain of Arrows. They're both aptitude abilities. While not the strongest abilities in the game, they are very strong starter abilities for the first weapon. As far as the second weapon, you get access to explosive arrows and cluster bomb. Both of these are actually fairly strong abilities and pair well with a lot of other bleed/arrow related skills that you have in your kit. The third weapon gives you access to Obscure Arrow and Void Trap, and while I'm not a big fan favorite of Void Trap because that just releases a stationary thing for enemies to step over, and I don't feel like it gets a lot of use, it does apply Doom, and so does Obscure Arrow, and if you go straight for a straight Doom build with this weapon, you are still absolutely going to wipe the floor with everybody on the map. And then, of course, in the final tier, we have the fourth weapon, which comes with Noxious Shot and Venomous Volley, Poison still being one of the best dots in the game next to Doom and Burn. And of course, as always, Poison does lead into the ability to possibly do Doom damage on hit as well. And this toolkit is very awesome. You can't go wrong with going a Doom build, a Poison build. Hell, you could even do a Bleed build and still come out on top. Even this one, I showcased a couple of weeks, maybe like a week or so ago, a build using the very first default weapon and taking in Titan Hunt mode and basically railroading the Void King. This is a very strong kit overall. As far as artifact power goes, we have Arrow Barrage. For each instance of this, it'll shoot arrows at a target direction that causes damage and applies a status effect. The fourth one does Poison, this one does Doom, this one does Bleed, and this one does Fragility. Fragility is super awesome. It's just basically like causing you to do extra damage. Builds up really fast, does a lot of stuff. As far as our Ascension power, I know I said I didn't have any like qualms with the Sentinel. Nature's Guardian might be the only place I have a qualm with, but it can be fixed relatively quickly. So essentially you'll find that there's a panther that spawns on the map. You have to be near it and chase down it, and you basically have to tame it, and then you get on the back of it and get improved stats and mobility while you're on the back of it. As long as you focus into taming, like reducing the tame speed of your Nature's Guardian, this is a very strong Ascension, and it pops up quite a bit. It's pretty awesome. Also, we have an additional rune up here, or a passive up here, that says whenever you take damage, you fire a target shot that bounces between enemies until it's traveled a certain distance, causing damage and gaining aptitude. This is a pretty cool little 1-point bonus to your toolkit, just giving you extra damage in the kit. Overall, I just feel like the Sentinel is a very strong character to have. And next we're moving on to the Paladin, and the Paladin is actually going to be the receiver of my only other C rating in the game so far. Again, this is entirely opinion. If you like the Paladin, by all means, love the Paladin. Thematically, I absolutely love the kit of the Paladin, but system-wise, just not a fun character to use, and honestly, just kind of a buzzkill as far as Paladins and Holy Light skills go. I just generally find myself not liking any little bit of the Paladin. I don't know what it is. I've tried several different builds. I find that the first weapon actually probably works the best, but even then, just not overall a fan. The first weapon gives you purity and prowess. The second weapon is going to work on finesse and purity. Third weapon is going to be prowess and radiance, and the fourth weapon is going to be prowess and resilience. And as far as prowess builds go, building prowess isn't a terrible stat to build, but there isn't a lot of synergy with the Paladin and a lot of his other skills, honestly. If you want to be good with the Paladin, you're going to end up having to take runes that maybe dip into other characters' ability pools in order to really get this character to shine. Something that, while I'm comfortable with doing, I really wish that a character would be able to stand on its own 2 feet with its own toolkits. But going into stuff like Titan Hunt, I find that I just have to whittle enemies down so slowly, whereas other characters just like make short work of most of the in-game content. As far as the artifact power goes, the artifact power is Blessed Hammer. Hammers rotate around you, causing damage on impact with any enemy. You can see the 4th weapon does Prowess, the 2nd weapon does Radiance, 3rd weapon does Finesse, and the first weapon does Purity. This is just okay. You're not really going to notice it. I'm sure the stat build that it has for like Finesse is going to be seen really well as the Radiance. And Prowess as well, but just it's not going to be overall that strong. As far as the skill tree goes for the Paladin, your Ascension ability is Divine Inspiration. Essentially, you'll be gifted angelic abilities and become vengeful and basically hit enemies a little bit harder. This is probably, bar none, the Ascension that I hate just as much, if not as worse, than the Riftwalker. Because the thing with the Riftwalker thing is, the Riftwalker, you actually get hella strong from taking Riftwalker. It's absolutely insane. And eventually, at one point, you're going to have 100% uptime on it. It just takes a while to build there. Whereas with the Paladin's Divine Inspiration, basically what happens is there's going to be radial zones that show up, and then once they fill out, you're going to have a gold sphere that drops down. You have to collect it, and you'll basically get Divine Essence. If you don't pick it up fast enough, the value of this Divine Essence will actually whittle away, and you won't get nearly as much. But once you build it, you will have that vengeful form. The only problem is it diminishes so freaking quickly. And while you can reduce how slowly it diminishes, it still diminishes far too fast for the amount of power that it gives. Like, it should be way stronger and last much longer. Because where you have characters like the Necromancer, who I pretty much compare this to every character of the Necromancer as far as Ascension abilities, because Necromancer has probably one of the best Ascension abilities in the game. You can have 100% uptime on Ascension for Necromancer and Hound Master. And if you were balancing this as far as something, the amount of time it lasts, how strong it is, or something like that, Necromancer has one of the strongest Ascension abilities in the game with almost a 100% uptime. On the other side of things, the Paladin has probably one of the weakest Ascension powers with the shortest amount of time availability for it. And this could be so much better if they tooled this just to be a little bit stronger or last longer, or maybe even easier to like acquire. It just isn't. So unfortunately, Paladin just is not in a good spot personally for me. That may differ for you. If you have something that makes the Paladin work for you, feel free to let me know down in the comments. I am willing to have my mind changed about how terrible I think the Paladin is currently. Alright, and now we are on to the Chaoswalker. And I'm actually going to start by saying the Chaoswalker has about a B rating right here. It is not the best character, it's not the worst character. I would actually say it's kind of in the higher ranks of B. But way back when Chaoswalker first came out, I would actually say that Chaoswalker was probably one of my favorite characters in the game. And that is mostly because of the way that Chaos used to work. And I could be thinking about this wrong, but someone correct me if I'm wrong, but once upon a time, Chaos abilities actually used to spread negative status effects to all your targets, and the status effect that would basically be spread would be entirely random. So it basically used to be Chromatic Bolt, but for every single skill that had Chaos on it. Since they've changed it, it now is just an ability that does a random amount of damage, and some of the skills actually cause disarray, which causes your enemies to take a fluctuating amount of damage, usually more damage and less damage. And here you can see this disarray ability basically by default causes -1% to 5% additional damage at the start. I will say that overall, character skill wise, Manifestation of Chaos is probably one of the strongest abilities in the game. It is just flat out so incredible as far as like screen clearing, that if you just decided to go for a Chaoswalker build and you I keep on saying Chaos Worker, I mean Chaos Walker, and you would like a singular focus build that worked on just manifestations of chaos, you'd probably be doing some excellent work. It is an extremely strong skill to have. As far as the first weapon goes, it's just okay. Nothing to write home about. It's just okay. The thing with the Unchained Chaos and Chaotic Missiles and them being Chaos ability, doing varying amounts of damage, if you're not rocking the Controlled Chaos rune, you're kind of shorting yourself on damage, because that's the most unfortunate thing about this, is just how unreliable your damage actually is. When we get to the second weapon, you're actually in a better spot with the poison weapon, which is called the Artifact of Corruption. Obviously, that is because of corrosion here, which says it causes damage based on the number of stacks of poison. Plus, it doesn't actually remove the poison from the enemies, which is a really good bonus, because whenever this pops, whether you get multicast or whatever, the damage is going to keep on increasing as you pour more poison stacks onto your enemy. And you do have access to all the normal poison abilities, such as Pestilence, Poison Cloud, Acid Rain, Poison Puddle, and Poison Bolt. I generally go with Poison Cloud, Acid Rain, and Pestilence as my big poison abilities, just because the amount of coverage you can get with them. As far as the third weapon here that we have, which is called the Flamewalker Spire, it's also just an okay weapon, but it's actually still pretty strong because of Orbs of Destruction. Orbs of Destruction doing damage based on the number of stacks of burn you have on the target. It sounds great, but it's just okay because I don't know, it just doesn't hit as hard as I would like it to. As far as the fourth weapon goes, I haven't actually used this weapon, so I'm not going to comment on this one. I now realize, after looking at it, that I haven't even give it the upgrade, so we're not even going to be able to see what the artifact power is. So let me try to upgrade it to 4 right here, so we can even see what the artifact power is. So as far as artifact power here, we have Affliction Orbs. Orbs rotate around you, releasing projectiles at enemies that cause random damage and applying. For the first weapon, Disarray. Second weapon is Poison, third weapon's Burn, and the last weapon is going to be Dazed. This one is actually noticeable because it's going to be increasing the amount of stacks you have on your enemies. Maybe not so much for the Affliction Orbs, just because that's going to be increasing your outright damage, and it does have that Chaos property, so it's going to be doing between 1 and 900 points of damage. But these have like standard damage brackets, so like 450 for this one, and 450 for this one, and 450 for this one. So you're probably going to notice at least these two a lot more. Maybe not this one as much, but Daze does give you that additional crit chance, so it's fairly good. As far as your skill tree goes, you have Altar of Chaos. So essentially around the field, you're going to find a whole bunch of altars, and as you kill enemies, you're going to be collecting basically chaos energy. You'll have 4 bars that you have active underneath right above your health bar. In each bar filled that you sacrifice to an altar is actually going to give you different abilities. So you'll have 4 different powers at any given time. And all you have to do is walk over to an altar, and you can actually sacrifice all 4 bars fairly quickly. Within like half a second, you can actually sacrifice all 4 bars to be empowered for 4 different abilities, and they do go out over time. The cool thing about this specific ability is as you kill enemies and get more power, it's actually possible to have a great amount of uptime on Altars of Chaos. So I would definitely say this is actually one of the stronger pluses for Chaoswalker, because that Chaos ability through Altars of Chaos actually makes a substantial difference in your combat abilities. Moving on to the Beastmaster. The Beastmaster probably is in my top 3 favorite characters in the game, full stop. This is actually one of the strongest characters you'll have access to in the early game. Even with the first weapon here called the Wild Cleaver, you already have access to poison abilities as well as finesse and weakness in the toolkit. Poison being extremely amazing, weakness being extremely amazing. You already have Plague Viper, which gives you cunning, which means it's going to target basically priority targets for you, and you have multicast on your initial hit with the Venomous Strikes. Plus, you have access to all your normal poison abilities. You're going to go a long way really quickly with the Beastmaster. After that, the second weapon and the third weapon are just okay. The weapons aren't specifically my favorite part of these. I will say his character skills wise, War Tiger is actually insanely cool because you can build up a lot of bleed on a target really fast. And as you increase units with War Tiger, you're going to be shredding through enemies with bleed. Plus, they have cunning. Vulnerable targets or your priority targets are going to be ripped to shreds. As far as the other summons like Swamp Boar and Cave Bear and even Battle Moose, they do actually leave a lot to be desired in my personal opinion. But I don't really honestly think you're going to focus too much on those. However, this fourth weapon with the spider ability with bleed and weakness, this thing is ungodly. Probably one of the strongest weapons in the game, hands down. without even leveling up this thing, you will still rip enemies to absolute shred. Both of these are actually considered bomb abilities, which is kind of funny to me, but they are incredibly strong to have. As far as artifact power goes, your artifact power is called Watchful Hawk. You'll release a hawk that flies around you, causing damage and applying a status effect. This one's poison, this one's finesse, this one is shattered, which is actually pretty, it sounds good. And then the fourth one is bleed. These you will actually notice to some degree, especially the first one and the fourth one. This fragility one, I don't really feel like I notice it that much. Plus, I don't really care for the base default abilities you have with it. Same with the third one. Shattered sounds really good, but Cave Bear by itself is just really not all that strong. As far as your Ascension ability for the Beastmaster, you have Call of the Wild. And this is very similar to the Sentinel build, and basically instead of having to tame a monster, you're actually going to be finding basically dino tracks in the ground, and you basically have to follow the dino tracks, and after you follow all the dino tracks, you'll basically summon a series of dinosaurs that go off and attack your priority targets. This ability it's definitely ease of use sort of thing. It's kind of a fire and forget. Once you activate, you don't have to worry about it no more. Your dinos are going to go do their thing. They're going to, I believe they have cunning. They'll go after your vulnerable targets, your priority targets, and rip them to shreds. You will notice this. Does have a fairly high uptime on this one. I think the dinosaurs last like 40 seconds. I could be wrong. It does feel like a substantial amount of time. The runes, by the way, for Beastmaster are actually pretty incredible, including this last rune, Extra Help, and it adds an extra unit to your summon squads. I haven't really been speaking about the runes, but I will say flat out, this Extra Help one is incredibly strong. Overall, Beastmaster, probably one of the best characters in the game, bar none. That's just me personally. Let's move on to the next guy. Alright, so now we are on to the Assassin. I actually have this one written down as a B tier character, but I'm actually going to give him an A. And here's the reason why. I actually feel like the Assassin has come a long way in the sense that originally when they released this character, and again, these are all my opinions, this guy was trash. Absolute trash. In my opinion, one of the worst implemented characters in the game. It was awful. That's just me personally. I did not enjoy this character at all. But since then, we've come a long way. The first weapon is fairly good, but I feel like it's a trap for a lot of players looking into this because they're going to be suckered in by this cool little thing called Ambush here. And it says that you see right here, this ability right here gives Form, which is crit chance, and Haste, which is movement speed, but also has a chance to apply Bleed if you ambush a target. And Ambush, if you hold down the button right here, you can see an attack is considered ambush whenever you stun an enemy or you hit at a stunned enemy or from behind. And honestly, you're not going to be able to get the drop on a lot of enemies behind you. Most enemies have a pretty quick turn. The only times you're going to really be hitting enemies in the back is if it's like a Void Lord who stopped doing like a channel attack and you manage to get behind them while they're doing that. So I really wouldn't focus too much on the ambushing side of things until you gain access to what I consider to be probably one of the most important abilities in the toolkit, which is Smoke Bomb. When you're in a Smoke Bomb, which you can get at a fairly decent level, anytime you're in a Smoke Bomb with the enemy, any attack that you do is actually considered an ambush. So as long as you look at these abilities and think to yourself, ambush is just a bonus, don't focus on that. The other weapons in this toolkit are actually fairly good. The third weapon, I really don't like bombs too much, but this is actually still a pretty good bomb bomb-based weapon. That's what I meant to say. Second weapon, I kind of went over a little bit, kind of glossed over it, didn't say much about it, but it is strong. You get Finesse and Haste. This is multicast and speed. This is a very good weapon to have. I like it. I actually have a build that actually combined using the abilities from this weapon and this weapon. As long as you have Smoke Bomb, you're going to be getting a lot of those ambush procs fairly easily. And if you go into Titan Hunt, it's actually possible to have your ambush affect your enemies regardless of whether or not you're in the Smoke Bomb. It's actually really nutty to take into Titan Hunt. I would actually say this is actually one of the better characters to take into Titan Hunt, assuming that you go after the power that makes it to where all abilities ambush regardless of where you are standing. As far as the fourth weapon goes, it is also a very strong weapon because, of course, it does Doom. Doom is easily one of the best status effects in the game. I've said that a number of times over and over again. And of course, this one does damage based on all the doom stacks and removes them, which is not ideal, but this actually does quite the bit of damage. I would say that this is definitely as strong as all the other ones. And that's probably why I made this an A-list character, is because there really isn't a bad weapon in his kit. As far as his artifact power goes, it's called Shadow Dance. You emit an aura that applies bleed to nearby enemies. You become elusive and can walk through enemies. So that's for the first weapon. That one does bleed. This one does fragility. This one does disorient. And this one does doom. Being able to walk through your enemies is pretty good and probably makes the ambush proc a lot more often than normally you would, since you're able to pass directly through your enemies. So there is that. You don't have to worry about character collision. As far as the skill tree goes, for the assassin, you have Bounty Hunter. So essentially every once in a while you have an open contract. A target will show up on the map. If you chase him down and kill him, you'll get a whole bunch of buffs, including one that causes all of your attacks that have ambush to immediately trigger regardless of where you're standing. This is an incredibly useful ascension power to have if you're going the ambush route, and I would heavily suggest filling out all your ambush nodes as quick as you possibly can, and making sure you take every passive upgrade as you level up that gives you reduced time until the next contract is available, so that way you can have higher uptime on your ambush skills. Yeah, honestly, I'm kind of overwhelmed at how good the assassin is now compared to how bad it used to be, in my opinion. Next, we are moving on to the Elementalist, and honestly, I'm going to give the Elementalist a B rating. I'm actually going to say like a B minus, because honestly, the Elementalist kind of struggles in the start. I'm not a big fan of the first or second weapon. They are not particularly strong. The Lightning Beam and the Call Lightning, they're okay, but they're not incredibly potent. They're definitely not going to be the screen clearing machines that they need to be. On the other side of things, the Frost weapon kind of suffers from the same thing. You have slow and icy veins on these skills, and while they seem pretty interesting, I think unless you pair them like with Frozen Warhammer right here, you're not going to get a lot out of this toolkit as far as these two abilities go. Honestly, I would pretty much not, if I didn't have to have, if I didn't want two abilities to start out with, I probably wouldn't take Weapon Expert, because I find Freezing Blows to kind of be lackluster. But when we move on to the third and fourth weapon, we're actually going to find where this character really shines, because Ray of Fire and Heat Explosion are actually very incredibly powerful abilities to have as you upgrade these weapons. Same thing with the fourth weapon, where you get Contaminated Cut and Outbreak. You're doing a lot of poison damage, and you're doing percentage damage based on the poison that was removed. Incredibly strong weapons. These third and fourth weapons absolutely make or basically save the Elementalist. As far as artifact power goes, all of them are called Ball Lightning and give you a status effect based on the chain lightning that jumps. The first one gives you Daze, second one gives you Slow, third one gives you Burn, and the fourth one, of course, gives you Poison. I honestly don't think you're going to notice this one that much. I do see the balls out there, and they seem to do decent damage. I don't ever really notice this power active even when it's going, because usually you're going to have a lot going on due to the Ascension power of the Elementalist, which honestly, the Ascension power for the Elementalist is probably one of the better ones in the game. Speaking of the Elementalist Ascension power, it is called Elemental Overlord. The Elementalist may now collect elemental orbs that fall from defeated enemies. Upon collecting 3 of them, the Elementalist releases a burst of energy for each type of orb collected. So as you kill enemies, you're going to have 3 orbs above your health bar, indicating which orbs you've picked up. You're going to have one for lightning, ice, fire, I can't remember if you have doom or not, air, and earth, I think, are some of them. I don't remember specifically which each one of them does, and I honestly can't tell you if the orbs do something different other than just doing elemental damage, but you're gonna see a crap ton of these orbs littered all over the screen. At about 5 minutes into your run, you're going to be chaining this elemental overload effect everywhere all the time, and you will notice it. It is very graphics intensive, so you might be having to tone down your opacity based on how much you are triggering this effect. It's going to be a lot, and these orbs really do add up to a lot of damage. You're going to notice enemies dying much faster as you trigger them. But overall, Elementalist is just okay. That third and fourth weapon, though, really helped bring him a little bit higher on the list. Moving on to the Legionnaire, I'm actually going to start by saying that Legionnaire is getting an A rating. which is kind of weird for me because originally I was actually going to put it much lower on the list because I was not a fan of this first weapon. The first weapon, which is called the Fangs, oh no, the Light Spear, the two abilities right here, they're really not great, and you're going to struggle fairly early game with this. But once you get access to the second weapon, which I believe you get at level 10, things start to pop off a little bit more. While I'm not a fan of the Electrified ability, I will say that due to Summon Infantry and Jupiter Spheres, you'll actually start building quite a bit of damage. Pair that with something like Power Conductor as well as Poison, and you have yourself quite a hero. I actually usually end up taking Jupiter Spear, Summon Infantry, and then I usually end up taking Power Conductor, and then I end up taking Poison abilities for my other one. Poison abilities is really going to make the Legionnaire pop for you. I usually end up going for Pestilence and Acid Rain as well as Poison Cloud, and then making even my electrical attacks build Poison, and especially with Power Conductor and Jupiter Spear, you're actually going to be building a lot of poison damage real fast. This weapon does really well. Moving on to his third weapon, this is easily the strongest weapon he has. Fangs of Vipernus, hands down, one of my favorites. It took me a while to actually get around to using this one, but Purging Slam is another example of a skill that was implemented and is just straight out OP. Not only does this damage do damage based off the amount of poison stacks that are enemies that are moving away, dealing percentage-based elemental damaging effects are incredibly strong, but this also gives you max health every time you use it, giving you 2.5 extra health, so just making your Legionnaire that much more tankier. As far as the fourth weapon goes, we have ourselves the Vulcan's Impaler. Also a very strong skill. The burn build, if you decide to go that route, is incredibly strong. He has access to burn skills as well. You could also pair it with poison if you want to have two elemental dots. I really don't want you to focus too much on having too many dots on an enemy, but having poison and burn on target, still going to eat through targets fairly quickly. As far as the Ascension or the artifact power goes, we have Summon Catapult. Basically, you build a catapult at your position for a few seconds that shoots projectiles at enemies, causing damage and applying exposed. And the traits are Cunning. Second weapon, you have Dazed. Third weapon has Weakness, Weakness being incredibly good. And the fourth weapon doing Shattered. I would actually say these last two are insanely amazing. I would even go so much to say that the first one is also really good if it weren't for the fact that these two weapon skills just kind of suck. Third one, I would say Dazed. Dazed is decent. It's not terrible, it's not decent. The cool thing to note about the Summon Catapult artifact power is this actually used to be the Ascension ability for the Legionnaire. Long time ago, you actually had to pick up scrap on the ground, and in the middle of the arena that you were fighting in, you'd find a number of broken catapults you could turn that scrap into, and they would last for the rest of the round, but you basically had to repair the catapults. It was not a fun mechanic by any means, so they actually removed it and ended up reworking it and adding it as an artifact power. Now the Ascension of power for the Legionnaire is actually, I believe, Centurionate. And this is really, really, really good. It comes up quite often enough to use it. You'll basically see fallen comrades on the ground. You go over there, channel them for half a second or however long it takes. You'll pick up 8 of your buddies, I believe it takes, and then they start fighting for you. You actually get a cool little flag on your back to indicate that you've been empowered, and then they go and run off and they tackle and shred through enemies like butter. They are incredibly strong, incredibly useful, and they come up well enough for you to get active availability to them for a lot of your match. So there is that. Moving on to the MVP of all Soulstone survivors, we have the Necromancer. I'm not even to sugarcoat this. This is the best character in the game, bar none. No one can change my mind. Any video that you've seen of me talking about the Necromancer has nothing but praise. This character was chiseled from the stone of the gods. Like this lady right here is absolutely one of the strongest characters. As far as weapon wise goes, you really can't go wrong with any of the weapons per se, but if I had to like really kind of showcase the two powerhouse weapons, it would be the first weapon, the Wooden Scythe, as well as the third weapon, Noxious Reaper. I haven't really gotten a lot of use with this second weapon. I do want to try using that one, but I haven't got around to it. The Spectral Guardian, I believe, is newer to me than some of the other abilities, and I haven't really gotten a lot of play with Soul Release just yet. The fourth weapon is incredibly strong, but because of the fact that they are chaos abilities, you do have to take controlled chaos if you want to get the best out of it, so that way that you get that higher amount of damage roll. As far as character skills go, Putrid Hounds, Skeletal Archers, Skeletal Mage, no matter what build you have, if you add any order of these guys to your roster on your hotbar, you are going to win. They are just absolutely some of the strongest summons in the game, bar none. They all have cunning except for Skeletal Mages. The cool thing about a lot of the range units is they tend to stay near your player character and target in the direction that you're targeting, which is really nice because characters like the Skeletal Warriors, you really can't target too much. They're just going to run off and do their own thing. Albeit their AI is a little bit better than they used to be. They are still just not as focused on what you want to fight as to what they want to fight. As far as your artifact power goes, you're going to have Death's Owner, summons wraiths that cause damage and applies a status effect. They gain bonus damage based on the quantity of summons you control. So the more summons you have, which is, you're definitely, incentivized to do, the more they're going to hit. So the first weapon gives us Disorient. Second weapon gives us Fragility. The third weapon gives us Weakness, which is incredibly good. And the fourth weapon is going to be Disarray. Honestly, Noxious Reaper is probably going to be the best bet for you. And if you take something like Unexpected Arsenal, you can make like a full summon build here. Even though I think Putrefy isn't a summon, but Plague Rats is. You are just absolutely going to rip and shred through enemies. Using Plague Rats and Putrid Hounds, you're going to be able to get directly into Doom damage whenever you get a passive for that, or you can add in Skeletal Mages here that does apply Doom, and you're going to have access to two of the strongest status effects in the game, bar none. As far as the artifact power goes, you will fill it. Those extra dots such as Weakness are definitely something that you're going to fill, help you shred through enemies. As far as our Ascension power goes for the Necromancer, welcome to the strongest Ascension power in the game, in my personal opinion. This is called Reanimation. Basically, you're going to find parts of destroyed abominations on the ground. After you collect so many pieces of the abominations, you're going to summon said abomination. I believe you're only allowed to have 8 of these total. The cool thing about these is they do die after a certain amount of time, but you're going to be able to keep your army fairly healthy and built with these guys. They have amazing AoE damage around them. They'll have a circle around them showing you basically the radius of it, and they do attack priority targets, and they do boast quite a bit of damage. This Ascension power pretty much has an 100% uptime from the moment you raise your first abomination to the moment you raise your last one. You're going to have this available with you at all times. Best character in the game. That's all I got to say about the Necromancer. Oh, and I actually didn't give the Necromancer a rating. Necromancer is my S tier for the game. It is the only S tier I have in the game. I'm not saying that there aren't characters that are worth an S tier. S tier. This guy. Yeah, that's it. Moving on to the Death Knight. The Death Knight I would actually give an A rating. However, there's a caveat. This one actually has a B rating at the start, just because you can find yourself in a very dangerous spot with the Death Knight. It is a very tricky character to use for some people, and why is that? Well, because the Death Knight loses use of probably one of the more important things with any character, which is that if you look down here at the detailed list, you're actually unable to use dash, and that is applied to every weapon. That is because you come with your own horse, which means you are sprinting everywhere you go. He has 90% movement speed by base for everything else. And I'm also certain because of his body mass, which it doesn't really explain what that does, but he has no collision with any enemies, which means he will never run into like a group of enemies and be stopped because he is on his horse and can't dash out of it. But that being said, the problem that you might tend to have with the Death Knight is you might take unwanted damage more than you'd like to, because of the fact that since you don't have a dash, if you're not moving fast enough or you don't keep an eye on certain things, you might find yourself in the way of damage just for how fast you are unable to avoid certain amounts of telegraph attacks on the ground. That being said, the first two weapons that he has access to, which are the Unholy Claymore and the Great Sword of Corruption, are definitely two of the strongest weapons that he has in his kit. Why? Well, Doom and Poison. Need I say more? The third weapon is just okay. It is more of a bulwark finesse weapon. These skills are fun to use, but honestly, probably this makes it the weakest one. Doesn't really have any like status debuffs they put on targets. It would be nice to pair it with something else like poison or doom related abilities. I kind of stay away from ice abilities, although Ice Vortex is definitely one of the strongest there. As far as the fourth weapon, which is an ice weapon, which is called the Winter Sorrow, I would say, honestly, that's not even the strongest part about the kit. Glacial Affinity, on the other hand, does make this kit worth using, because Glacial Affinity will deal damage or increase your damage modifier based on the number of slow stacks. So if you were to go all in on ice abilities, the Death Knight would be an absolute powerhouse. Like, this is actually surprising. I take Glacial Affinity when I was playing my Myrmidon, and it actually just changed the way I played my Myrmidon because of how big this damage bonus was. As far as artifact power goes, it's called Dragonflight. Calls a dragon that flies in the target direction, leaving an area behind that causes damage and applies a status effect. Disoriented for the first weapon, poison for the second ability, or weakness for the second ability, fragility for the third weapon, and slow for the fourth weapon. I haven't used this enough to really tell if this is actually noticeable, but I'm assuming if a dragon's flying overhead and hit enemies with status effects, you are probably going to notice it, but I really can't say anything too much about it. I haven't used a build with this one yet. Whenever I make a build guide in the here in the near future, I'll give my thoughts on what I think about that artifact power, because I do believe the artifact power was something they added in 1.0, which is the main reason why I haven't messed with it too much. As far as the artifact or the ascension ability goes, we have ourselves the Soul Harvest. This one I have kind of mixed feelings about. Essentially, as you kill enemies, you're basically going to charge this bar. It's got 3 sections to it, and there's basically going to be an altar in the middle of the arena. Each bar basically allows you to summon like another horse rider, one of the 4 horsemen, essentially. You are one of them. And you can have all 3 horsemen out at all times, and they seem to do a decent amount of damage. The only thing I find to be about this Soul Harvest ability is it seems to be a bit finicky, because you can actually maintain your riders out on the field and they'll keep doing stuff as you build up more energy and go sacrifice more energy to like basically reset the timers that they have on the field. The only problem I have with this is sometimes you find yourself sacrificing that power and then nothing happens. Like, their timers don't reset at all. They just kind of still die. And I don't know why that happens, but I'm not a fan of it. It just seems kind of finicky at times. I hope this is something they intend to fix. I don't know if anybody else suffers from this, but I do. Sometimes I spend 3 bars and then absolutely get nothing in return for my effort on that one. So, but overall, just a fairly fun character to play. Definitely a unique one since you don't have that dash. Next up, we have the Monkey King, and I'm actually going to give this guy an A rating from a new player perspective. This guy is insanely strong with the base toolkit that he has. He starts out with the Immortal Staff, and that gives you access to Massive Slam, as well as Spinning Staff, which are probably 2 of the strongest abilities in his toolkit, period, even compared to his character skills. Once you get access to Expansive Throw and Whirling Defense, you already have one of the strongest melee characters in the game. If you pair that with something like Earth Shield to keep him alive, or even Earthquake to cause brittle on enemies, you are absolutely going to devastate the field. As far as the second weapon goes, again, not a big fan of the Nimbus Lightning or Electrified status effect, but I want to go back and try this weapon. It's been a long while since I attempted using it. As you can see, I don't even have this upgraded to use the artifact power. I'm going to go ahead and upgrade it here just so I can see what the power is. The artifact power didn't used to exist for this character. I will say that the Trickster's Boomstick actually used to be my favorite because it applies bleed and also weakness, and also does damage based on the amount of bleed you cause on targets. As far as the fourth weapon goes, it is an okay weapon. I did use this way back when. If you pair it with other skills they have Colossal, you're going to have a lot of range with that. I did have one build with Singular Focus that allowed me to do nothing but Earthquake, and you will absolutely shatter the battlefield with Earthquake. This used to be an incredibly strong attack. I don't know how it holds up now, and I'm actually curious to find out in the future, but I would say that right off the bat, the first and third weapon, definitely one of the strongest toolkits access to the Monkey King. As far as artifact power goes, we have King's Illusion, summons a static clone of the Monkey King that attacks enemies, causing damage and applying Shattered, or status effect. Comes with Cunning. The second weapon gives us Dazed, the third weapon gives us Disoriented, and the final weapon gives us Brittle. I can't really speak on the Brittle one, but I will say on behalf of the Shattered one and the Disoriented, you are really going to feel those. Yeah, just a super beginner-friendly character to use. Artifact power will be felt. I think it does really well. As far as our skill tree goes for the Monkey King actually has a very interesting ability. It's called Twilight Harmony, and this one is active quite frequently. So throughout your battle, you'll basically see in the middle of your bar, you're going to have a yin-yang symbol that's divided into 3 parts, and then your main yin-yang symbol in the middle. As you play through the match, you're going to have white symbols pop up and black symbols pop up. Each one of them does something a little bit different. The white symbols, however many you have of those, are actually going to summon more tanky units that you basically go after enemies and kind of tank enemies for you. Whereas the black symbols actually spawn DPS units that actually do more damage. And I will say, after figuring it out, like what each one meant, because I used to go with the balance of like 3 white symbols, 3 black symbols. I didn't really I didn't know that they meant something different until I was actually found out about hovering over the ability in game and it's showing you what kind of bonuses you get. But now that I know that, and I just mostly go after the black symbols, you will notice an absolute damage increase whenever you're going after those. If you want something more tankier, make sure you go after the white symbols, and that's going to summon like tankier soldier units to fight alongside of you. Overall, just a great character to have, and that Ascension power has a pretty high uptime. I would say that it does fall off. There is no way to keep it up, but you can decrease the amount of time before the next yin yang symbols hop up. Next, we're moving on to the Engineer, and I am actually going to give him an A rating. He has some of the best weapons in the game for like a character across the board. And the funny part is they don't even have like elemental status effects. Like, you're not going to be doing like an elemental effect other than maybe Bleed. As you can see, 2 of the weapons actually have that. But overall utility, this guy is super great. I did just recently put out a video where the Engineer, basically, I actually started him at level 1 and then tried to see how far I could level him. And I believe I got to like 85, 86 or somewhere in that video. And that's just because of how strong his toolkit is, even at level 1. His default weapon right here, the Ammo Devourer, does a great job of building crit damage and crit chance on enemies. As far as the Easy Robot Launcher QT, I will say this is probably the strongest weapon in his toolkit because it actually has summoned units, and summon builds are very strong. So you can have a whole field of sentry turrets and mechanical spiders going around doing a whole bunch of damage, plus you have ammunition and Shattered built onto these guys, and Cunning, so they're going to go after your priority targets. They're going to build multicast, and they're going to do armor shred on your targets. And if you get the character skill Heavy Artillery, you're going to add even more summon units to apply weakness and bleed. Very, very strong weapon. As far as the third weapon goes, I haven't had great use of this just yet. I did try making a build around it. It just hasn't worked quite out, quite yet. But maybe one day I'll actually have something for that. As far as the fourth weapon goes, this is actually the first weapon I made a build on, I believe. It gives you the QT Bomb Buddy as well as QT Land Surprises. I'm not a big fan of landmines, but using a bleed build for this actually does a hefty amount of damage, because it does do bleed damage based on the amount of stacks you have, like percentage damage, so very strong. Overall, for the artifact power, we have Plasma Sentry, builds with a Plasma Sentry at your target position that shoots at nearby targets, causing damage and applying fragility for that one. Shattered for that one. Dazed for the third weapon. And for the fourth weapon, we have Disoriented. You will fill these. These are summoned units. You will see them on the field, they'll be doing their business, and you'll enjoy having them around as company. As far as Ascension goes, for the Engineer, we actually have the Mechatron OP 9001. This is actually a very, very strong empowerment buff to your character. Essentially, as you play through the game, you're going to find ore spread around the map that basically drops off in different spots. After you collect the ore, you're basically going to mount up in your own mech and start shooting a volley of rockets while moving faster and being empowered. This ability doesn't last a very long time, but it also doesn't take a lot of time to empower. It's very possible to have quite the amount of uptime on this, because as soon as you drop out of the mech, you're immediately going to be starting allowed to collect more fuel. As a matter of fact, while you're in the mech, you can increase the longevity of being in the mech by collecting more fuel. It will have a faster, the amount of coal or energy you get from the coal will reduce over time. So you will eventually have to come out of your mech, but it does not take a lot of effort to get back in it and start basically shooting rockets at enemies again in the mech. Overall, just a fantastic character to use from beginning to end. And last but not least on my list of characters for the tier list, starting out with all the characters you're going to be able to access, we have ourselves the Myrmidon. And I'm going to give the Myrmidon a solid B rating. Nothing super to write home about weapon-wise. I honestly think maybe the first weapon might honestly be the strongest weapon in the toolkit. Maybe the fourth would be a fair bit different. If you went something like an ice route, or a earthquake route, but the first weapon is actually what's it called, the Song of the Sirens, and I do have a build I want to showcase with that one in Titan Hunt. That's actually going to be coming up soon, and that is because of the fact that the Glacial Trident and Frozen Shards do give you icy veins, and I did have to think outside of the toolbox for this one. But essentially, with using abilities from another character, this actually becomes one of the strongest builds you can have in the game, in my opinion. And I believe this is actually something you can use for the Death Knight. I'm going to give that a try later on. The rest of the weapons, they're just okay. The second weapon gives you access to crit chance abilities. Third weapon is a purity-based weapon, and the fourth weapon is based off of Colossal and Resilience, which is basically armor stuff. Nothing super to write home about it. As far as artifact powers go, you basically summon units called Gilkin Servants, and they'll apply status effects such as Slow, Bleed, Dazed, and Brittle for that last one. Brittle you are going to fill if you decide to go to a Brittle route, but other than that, skill-wise, just okay. I do like the fact that you basically have a Sharknado as one of your abilities, and I think at one point in time I made a video on that. Pretty decent. But other than that, just kind of meh. You know, I hope that maybe we should make some changes. We still have a fifth weapon to unlock, so I'm hoping that fifth weapon will change a lot for some of these characters. As far as the skill tree goes for the Myrmidon, we have access to probably one of the better ascensions of the game, which is Blessings of the Depths. As we kill enemies, we'll actually collect fervor, and as we collect their fervor and fill up the bar, a trident will drop from the sky, we'll collect it, and we'll gain access to Oceanic Strike, which will basically be just a giant DPS increase for us. As far as ascensions go, this is probably one of my favorite ones in the game, mostly because you don't ever have to worry about it. Essentially, as you fill the bar up, it's kind of like Rage from the Barbarian. Trident will drop down. You'll pick it up when you want to, which is fantastic, because if you want to time it specifically for like a Void Lord spawn, or when like there's an important battle getting ready to come up, you can save that Trident for when you need it the most. And that's probably the upside of that compared to something such as like Rage from the Barbarian. Also, this Trident has quite the amount of uptime. Like, it lasts a while, and then after you lose it, even without too many stat points investments with your passive trees or your passive abilities you gain in-game, you're going to be able to get this Trident back fairly quickly. Overall, just a very, very decent ascension, and probably the thing that wins me over the most about the Myrmidon. Alright, and then I am sorry that I am actually not going to touch on the Demon Hunter, the Cursed Captain, the Shaman, the Machinist, or the Samurai for now. The only reason why I'm really not touching on these for the most part is because of the fact that by the time that you get to these characters, you're going to have a lot of this other characters filled out and you're working on upgrading. So when you get to these guys, your impression of these other characters is probably going to be a lot higher than it should be, just because you're going to have passive investments for those characters whenever you fill out these extra nodes that apply to your other characters. That's not to say that they're not strong in their own right without them. The Demon Hunter has a pretty good toolkit. The Cursed Captain is just kind of okay. The Shaman is a fairly decent kit. The Machinist is absolutely broken, and the Samurai is an absolute monster. If I was just going to give them a general rating altogether, I would give all these guys except for the Cursed Captain, I might give him a B. These other guys, I'm going to give like an A, just because they're absolutely strong. The Cursed Captain has a little bit to be desired, but I don't want to touch too much on those, because you guys, if you're in the early days, you probably don't have access to these characters just yet. They do require you going to Unholy Cathedral and the Titan Hunt mode in order to unlock them. And there's just a lot to talk about there. But if you want to see a video talking specifically about the pros and the cons of those specific characters, make sure you like, subscribe, comment down below, let me think of that. And if this guide was helpful to you all as far as tier lists and making you make a decision on what characters you can play as, what to farm as, that sort of thing, let me know, because this video actually did take quite a bit of time for me to put together here. That being said, until next time, you guys take care, and I will catch you all in my next video. Later.